Tell how popular a church is by the Sunday morning crowd. We were popular this morning, weren't we? You can tell how popular the speaker is by the Sunday night crowd. Thank you. I was praying for 3. And look at you. And you can tell how popular Jesus Christ is by the Wednesday night crowd. I think there's some wisdom in that. And good to have you here tonight. And I hope that you'll be here for every service if you can. And bring some visitors, be inviting folks. And in fact, what I'd like to ask you to do, and I'm going to ask for some volunteers here in just a moment, so be ready to raise your hand if this interests you. What I'd like to ask you to do is, those of you that are believers, which I hope is all of you, I'd like to ask you, if you would, to get along with the Lord at your convenience tomorrow. Maybe the first thing to hit the floor when your alarm clock goes off in the morning could be your knees. What a great way to start the day, teenagers, young people. What a great way, men. But whatever's convenient for you, folks, just get along with the Lord. Not while you're doing the dishes, not while not while you're driving. Just some concentrated time where you get along with the Lord for a couple minutes or for however long you want, and pray. Would you just pray? Pray about anything you want. But in addition to whatever you pray for, would you please remember these 2 requests I'm about to give you. Number 1, I see some of you reaching for paper. Good for you. God bless you. In most churches I'm in, they just kind of look at me like I'm bald. I'd like you to pray, number 1, that, here's my first request. Would you just please pray that God gives us a good turnout this week? And you realize that if you say that, you're kind of praying for those that are inviting visitors and neighbors and friends and co-workers. And so let's just pray that God would give us good attendance this week. And then number 2, would you just join me in praying that God would give us long-lasting fruit from our time together, long after I'm off the scene? May our time together just be a fruit-bearing time for this church, all right? Would you pray about those 2 things? Will you do that? Again, folks, pray about anything you want. But in addition to that, would you remember those 2 requests? Could I get volunteers who would do that sometime at your convenience tomorrow? Wow, oh God, thank you. Young people, thank you for raising your hand. And I'll ask you tomorrow night how many of you were able to do that, okay? And hold you just a little bit accountable. Well, as I told you this morning, I do have 3 CDs available. I sold a couple of them this morning, but they are available to you if you would like. And I didn't say this morning, but just in case somebody might be interested, yes, I do take checks. And my son put an app on my phone where I can now take Visa and MasterCard. Yes, I've done it. It works. And had a lady just 2 weeks ago in Maine buy $75 worth, and we put it right on her Visa, and sure enough, it worked. And so if that interests you, see me afterwards. The nice thing about Visa is that you're not really paying for it. So, so buy as many as you want. Use your card. Ladies, you go right ahead. Let her fly. But anyway, that is available to you. The number that Kevin and I just played is on that first CD, Trumpet Rejoice. And except it's not just piano like Kevin did, it's full orchestra. And Kevin did his best to imitate full orchestra. He tried. And so the piano can only do so much, right, Kevin? And so anyway, good to see you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we're memorizing the verse. May I just refresh your memory? It goes like this, 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Would you stand, please, like one big choir? And I know you guys have already had a 5 o'clock choir rehearsal tonight, and so you are all warmed up and ready to go. But before we do that, would you just, Pastor had us shake hands this morning. What I'd like to do tonight is I'd like to do something that President Obama did one time. He was a little concerned about hygiene and cold going around. So he would go up to people, Pastor, would you help me? And do this. You do an elbow bump, just like that. Why don't you give about 5 of those right now? Would you please? An elbow bump. Give somebody an elbow bump. Careful you don't do it too hard. It's a bruise.
Come on, Becky Sue.
All right. Nobody got you, did they? Oh, they did. Oh, good. Oh, good. All right. Super. We want everybody included. And all right, let's do our memory verse together, shall we? On your mind. You know, it's kind of dark up here, Pastor. I don't remember. Oh, 2 lights are burned out. Looks like right there. Maybe that's why. But it seems like a little dark here. That might be a good thing because that you don't get quite as much glare. Okay, on your marks, get set. With the top of your golden voices. Oh, easy back there. Okay. Let's go. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And we'll do that again tomorrow night. Okay, before you sit down, let's have a little prayer. Could we please? Heavenly Father, thank you for the song service we just enjoyed. Thank you for the fact that we can stand here tonight, right now, and know Calvary covered it all. Lord, I think of 1 John 2, where it says, I write unto you, little children, because your sins are forgiven you for his name's sake. Lord, thank you for being so loving and forgiving. Lord, there's nobody in this room that doesn't deserve hell. Lord, you've been so gracious to us. And Father, as we look at this passage tonight, I pray that the whole overall appetite and the spirit of anticipation when it comes to the Bible will grow in every life. In Jesus' name, amen. You may be seated. Folks, there was a young man. He was just about ready to turn 16, so he was still 15. And it was his family. He was a sharp young man, had a lot of gray matter, and good IQ. And he was wrestling, and had been for years, with this whole idea of a Bible, heaven, hell. Wasn't sure, and he really kind of believed that. It was his family's tradition that every Sunday morning they would go to a Methodist church where they were members at. And one Sunday morning, the family got up, and the night before there had been a bad snowstorm. Are you people familiar with snow? I've heard about your winter. There had been a bad snowstorm, and they weren't able to get to that Methodist church. But this 15-year-old was kind of fascinated with the whole church idea, and he decided to just try this little Baptist church just up the street from where he lived. He'd never been there. And so by himself, without his parents, he just kind of got his winter gear on, and he walked down to that Baptist church and slipped into the back, and there was just literally a handful of people there. The pastor himself was unable to make the service. So that morning, a deacon, Brother Frank, got up and brought the message. It was just basically his testimony based on a verse in Isaiah. And that deacon just kind of shared how you can know for sure that you can be saved, and how he knew he was saved, and how that verse kind of spoke to him. And folks, for some reason, you never know when this is going to happen. For some reason, that simple, unprepared testimony rang the bell of this 15-year-old. And that deacon, knowing that there was this teenage visitor in the back, gave an invitation. One person that morning came forward. It was that teenager. It just rung his bell. He was dealt with in a side room, and on that Sunday morning, that 15-year-old got saved. Now, folks, when I say he got saved, he really got saved. There's no question. Because immediately, he had an unquenchable thirst for that book. They tell me that a typical teenager in the United States today spends on an average 30 hours a week on the internet, 2 of it pornography. That's the average. Can you imagine, Christians, what you would be like if you spent that kind of time in this book? This book always, without exception, in the life of a believer, always causes growth. That's the way this teenager was. He could not get enough of that book. And he studied it, and he read it, and he studied it, and he discussed it. He spent hours, he just devoured it. And folks, he grew so quickly, this will shock you. He grew so quickly that a little Baptist church invited him at the age of 16 to be their pastor, and he accepted. Can you imagine? 16. Well, as a 16-year-old, he was very conscientious, and he brought great messages. He was a good speaker, and just really put a lot of study, and his reputation got out. And at the age of 19, the largest Baptist church of a huge city not far away came to him and said, would you please be our pastor? And at the age of 19, Charles Spurgeon started pastoring the largest Baptist church of London. And folks, it was a large church to begin with, but almost within the first 5 years of this ministry, that church doubled in size. He was a great preacher. His messages always got reprinted the next morning in the Monday London newspaper, and people were absolutely fascinated. I mean, it was literally SRO every Sunday morning, standing room only. This guy was so good. Well, about 5 years into his ministry, Charles really got burdened to start a college where other young men his age could come and study for the ministry. They started a Bible college. We are told that there were often 200 to 300 young men in that college learning how to preach. And you'll find this interesting, church. Not one of those young men ever paid a dime in tuition, room, or board. The church paid for everything. They were so burdened to see young men go in the ministry. Charles himself was a very dynamic preacher. And he would often stand in front of that student body and share his heart. We know what he shared because he wrote a book called Lectures to My Students. And one of the things that Charles would always tell these young men, and I'm going to kind of Shrock guys a little bit with your permission, but he would stand in front of the student body and he'd say, men, guys, listen to me. When you're preparing a message, when you're putting together a sermon, always make sure to insert into that sermon stories, illustrations, pictures. Because guys, they're like the windows of the auditorium. This is before electricity. They're like the windows of the auditorium. They let the light in. Charles was really big on metaphors. And folks, that is so true. Theology can be hard to understand, especially for men. I think women grasp it a whole lot quicker than men. Women have a gift, I think, of being more abstract than men do. And a lot of this is, forgive the word, abstract. It's hard to get your mind around some of the stuff that's in there. But when you liken it to a metaphor, when you liken it to a picture, it's like, oh, I get it. I get it now. Now, friends, lest you be tempted to debate that, may I just remind you that the world's greatest preacher ever did that all the time. His name was Jesus. We call them parables. Some story that illustrates some great eternal biblical truth. In fact, Bible students, just about every single writer used to compile this blessed book, and we believe there are about 40 of them, used that technique. They used that technique. It's fascinating to read Ezekiel. It's fascinating to read Isaiah and Jeremiah and all the metaphors that God uses to help us to understand theology. And what I'm going to do tonight is I want to take you to a picture, people. All of you are going to understand it. It's a picture that even our children are going to understand perfectly. It's a picture, folks, that kind of talks about your appetite for the Bible. No age factor, folks, no age factor. I'm talking about anybody who's saved. This picture is a description of what your attitude, my attitude, your appetite, my appetite ought to be towards this book. We never grow out of it. And it's a graphic picture. You'll find that picture, folks, in 1 Peter chapter 2. Would you turn there with me, please? 1 Peter chapter 2. I like Peter. As you study his life more and more, you realize that he was probably pretty impetuous. And I am too. But in 1 Peter chapter 2, Peter gives us, of course through the ministry of the Holy Spirit, Peter gives us a picture about your appetite for the Bible. And you see that picture in verse number 2. Let me read it, you follow, okay? 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 2 says this. As, which means like, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word that ye may grow thereby. As newborn babes. Now folks, let me just warn you. Can I put up a little caution sign right now? I have heard on the radio with my own ears men who have come to this verse and have said, that newborn babe thing, this is talking about new converts. Psst. No, it's not. We know that from the context, And we also know that from the verse itself. The most important, the focus of verse number 2 is not newborn babes. The focus, and you may want to circle it, the focus is the word desire. This is a verse about desire. It's talking about your desire, my desire for the Bible. May it be like the desire that a baby has for milk. Now, can I show you something, folks, tonight? My wife is a registered nurse, and she worked in the delivery area of a huge hospital in Chicago for a couple of years. And I have been around just been born babies with their moms, a whole gob in the ministry, as I'm sure your pastor has. Can I show you something I've never seen? I have never seen, I've never heard of a brand new mama holding her baby for the first time, looking at her baby and saying this, "Baby, I am your mother. It is so good to finally see you face to face. Now that you're in my arms and now that you're going to be staying in my home, we need to get something straight, baby. I know that you are an American baby and you love coffee, you love iced tea, you love Mountain Dew, you love Coke, but as long as you're in my house and I'm your mother, you will drink milk and like it. Do you understand me? Do I hear a yes, ma'am?" I've never heard of that. How ludicrous. Everybody knows that a just been born baby, a just been born puppy, a just been born kitten adores milk. Can I share with you something equally as ridiculous? Never does a pastor need to stand behind that sacred desk or in front of it like I am and say this, "Oh, Christians, you should love the Bible. You should like it. You ought to have an appetite for the Bible." How ludicrous. How dumb. If you're a real believer, you were born again with that appetite. Nobody has to tell you that. There ought to be a desire. You know what that word desire means? It's translated elsewhere in your King James Bible for the word lust. In fact, 90% of the time, it's used for the word lust. Well, folks, what a picture! Not only do you like the Bible, you lust for it. Do you know what the word lust means? Remember what the word lust means? Let me just help you tonight. Decades ago, I graduated from college. I was dating a young lady who would become my wife. I was dating a young lady that was a couple years behind me. She was a nursing student. If you know anything about nursing, it's considered the #1 hardest major in college. And they go to college forever, and her daddy had said to her, "Don't you marry anything until you're done with your education." I tried to talk her out of it. We were in love. We were throwing around the M-word, marriage. And we knew that's what we wanted. And I used to say to her, "Lori, sugar, I'll pay for your education. Let's get married." And she'd always say this, "Michael, I love you. I look forward to being married." I know you're going to find this hard to imagine. "I look forward to being married to you someday, but right now I belong to my daddy. I need to obey him." I got a good one. Guys, Kevin, Josiah, any other young men here? When you start getting interested in a young lady, watch how she treats her daddy. She'll treat you the same way. By the way, girls, a young man starts showing interest in you, watch how he treats his mama. He'll treat you the same way. I got a good one. You will. But I had to wait! I had to wait! I graduated a couple years before she did, and I went up to Chicago. I told you I've been up there a couple times, and got into a large ministry there, and started living as a bachelor. And for the first time ever in my life, I started having to cook for myself. I hate to cook. I still do. I hate it. I'm not patient. I don't like it. I like when other people cook for me, but I don't like to cook. But I knew the routine. I remember watching my mom do this. I got into my car. I went to a grocery store there in Chicago. I'm no longer making minimum wage. I'm making a good little salary. I walked into that grocery store, and folks, as I walked in there, I grabbed one of those grocery carts, and for the first time ever in my life, I'm going to use it for the right reason. It's not a go-kart, but I grabbed that grocery cart, and I went down to the first aisle. Well, everybody who's been in a grocery store knows the first aisle is always the produce aisle. I am not ashamed to admit to you tonight that as a 23-year-old young man, not one thing from that entire aisle ended up in my cart. I turned the corner. I am not making this up. I turned the corner to go up aisle 2. Baby food and paper goods. Who in the world needs that? 2 aisles. My cart is empty. I turned the corner to go down aisle 3. Canned beans, canned peas, canned corn. Who in the world wants that? 3 aisles in a grocery store, there's still not a thing in my cart. I'm getting worried. I turn the corner to go up aisle 4. Oh yeah, the cookie candy aisle. All kinds of stuff ended up in my cart. You guys ever had, excuse me, you guys ever had that candy covered, that frosting covered animal cookies? Have you ever had those with little sprinkles on them? Love those babies. I got all kinds of stuff in my car. From that, I went down aisle 5, boring, 6, boring, 7, boring, aisle 8, the ice cream pie aisle. All kinds of stuff in my car. Aisle 9, boring, 10, boring, 11, boring, aisle 12, the chips soda aisle. My cart is full. I went up to the cashier. I had no problem paying for this. I'm no longer making minimum wage, making a good little salary, no problem. Paid for all this. There was kind of a smile on the cashier's face. Loaded all that, took it out to my car, went back to my little apartment, loaded my cupboards, loaded my freezer, loaded my refrigerator, and began to eat like you children can only dream about because you got a mama that loves you. My mama was 2,000 miles away in Seattle, Washington. I was free, I was independent, and I could eat any way I wanted to, and I did. I don't know how well you know the human system, but I'm here to tell you tonight that if you eat that way for a week, it'll mess you up. I'm going to use a stronger word. It'll gunk you up. And oh, people, I got gunked up. That's as graphic as I'll get past it. But I got gunked up. And I remember feeling, I felt so bad. And I started, folks, to develop a craving, a lust, a craving. I could just feel in my jaw, I could feel in my mouth, I could feel in my teeth biting into a crisp, cold, juicy salad. That's cow food, a salad. There was a steakhouse not far away from the ministry there that had a long salad bar in it, and I remember going in there and willingly paying that price and just satisfying that craving at that salad bar. Folks, why did I have a craving? Because my body was saying, hey, idiot, there are nutrients we aren't getting, help us out down here, and I developed that craving. Folks, that's what that word desire means. You show me a real believer, and I'll show you somebody who in their spiritual life, their spiritual body, there is an ongoing craving for the Word of God. I just love it. But let me be honest with you folks tonight. As I had the privilege of going from church to church to church in America, just like yours, I see very little of that. I see a whole lot of craving for fashion. I see a whole lot of craving for Lady Gaga and Katy Perry. I see a whole lot of craving for the sports world, but very little craving for the Word of God. I'll tell you why. I am not questioning here tonight any of you as to whether or not you're saved. But it is possible, folks, for a Christian to have a system that's gunked up. And it will always rob you of your appetite for the Bible. In fact, folks, let me drive this home. Verse number 2 is verse number 2. There's a reason it's verse number 2. There is a prerequisite. Young people, do you know what that word means? There is a requirement for verse 2 to happen in your life. And oh, by the way, if you're a real Christian, you won verse 2. You want to be like that. Yeah, I would love to crave the Bible. I would love to lust after the Bible. But folks, in order for that to happen, verse number 1 has to happen first. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to start preaching verse number 1. I won't finish. I love verse number 2. There's a whole lot more there than meets the eye in that newborn baby thing. I love to preach that, and I will tomorrow night. But what I want to do tonight is I want to warm you up. And I want to start preaching verse number 1. Now, here in just a few moments, I am going to read in its entirety verse number 1. Can I just warn you about something, believers? As I read verse number 1, please remember, it's talking to believers. Oh, it sounds like somebody unsaved, but it's not. Verse number 1, Christians, was written to you. It's not written to unbelievers. Yeah, it kind of sounds like it, but it's not. Verse number 1 was written to believers. Verse number 1 is a Christian verse. Oh, but it's ugly. And what Peter's about to do is he's going to warn you, Christians, about the stuff that will always gunk up a spiritual mind. Let me read it to you. Can I please you follow along, okay? He says, wherefore, and that takes you back to the end of chapter 1, and we'll talk about that tomorrow night. But it says, wherefore, laying aside. What does the word lay aside mean, folks? Well, let me help you. The word lay aside, first of all, you need to understand it's something that you do. God doesn't do it for you. Your job, Christian, your job, lay aside. Now, let me tell you what that means. This week, you folks have graciously put me up in a very nice house. I believe it belongs to Frank and Lee's a daughter, and it's a beach house. That's kind of an investment, as I understand it. It's a rental. It's sweet. Come on over tonight. We'll have a party. I burned some popcorn last night, by the way, too, so it kind of stinks right now. But I'm staying in a very nice house, and it's really a sweet little home. And last night I went to bed. And it sounded all night like jets were flying over. It was the rain. And so I would wake up at various points, but I finally really fell into a deep sleep. And this morning, around 6:30 or so, my eyes went, boop! And the first thing through my mind was, where am I? That happens to me a lot. Where am I? Well, it took me just a few moments and I realized, oh yes, I am in Westerly, Rhode Island, and I need to get ready, and I'm going to be preaching at Shrock Baptist Church here in a few hours. Yeah. And, but folks, at that moment, I was wearing, I don't know what you call them in your home, I'm just going to share with you what we call them in my home. I was wearing what we call jammies. I was wearing jammies. Now folks, what I was wearing at that moment, if I showed up this morning to preach in what I was wearing, your gracious pastor would not have let me preach. It would have been indecent. I know you're sitting there thinking, well, what are you wearing? None of your business. But I was wearing jammies. So let me tell you what I did. I'm going to throw a Bible word at you. I laid aside my jammies in order to put on what I thought would be appropriate for Sunday morning. But in order to put this on, I had to lay aside my jammies. Folks, that's what Peter's telling you. Now that you're a Christian, it's now time to learn how to dress yourself on the inside, and you're going to have to lay aside stuff in order to lust for the Bible like your Savior wants you to, and by the way, like you would like to too if you're really saved. And he gives you what I call 5 garments. I call them garments, Bible students, because of the word lay aside. It's exactly what that word means. It means to take off clothing. And look at these 5 garments. Oh, they're incredibly ugly. Watch them. Wherefore, laying aside all malice. Christians, malice? Yeah. In fact, without being too offensive, I hope, your church is full of it. Your church is full of malice. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Hang tight. Let me read on. And all guile. Shrock Baptist Church, guile. Oh yeah, you better believe it. And hypocrisies. There are hypocrites in here. Yeah, you're looking at one. Yeah, we've all got that problem. Let's read on. And envies, and all, even the mouth, the tongue gets on it, and all evil speakings. 5 garments that will always gunk you up, people. 5 garments. And would you please understand something about these garments? They are what we call in theology sequential. Would you say that word out loud, please? They are what we call sequential. Let me tell you what that means. Malice, garment number 1, will always lead to guile, garment number 2, which will always lead to hypocrisies, garment number 3, which will always lead to envies, which will always lead to a tongue that's ungodly. 5 garments, they're sequential. And what I want you to understand tonight, Christians, is that it always starts with malice. Always. Now, malice is a word that we don't use a whole lot in English anymore. But let me tell you what the word malice here means. It's a Greek word that is translated back in the book of James for the word naughty. Naughty. That's what the word means. Naughty. Do you remember, those of you with white hair or no hair like me, do you remember what the word naughty means? We kind of think of little children when we say the word naughty. But I'm here to tell you tonight, it's for big children too, like you and me. It is very, very possible that I am looking at some really naughty retirees. Some of the naughtiest people I've ever met are retired. Just so stubborn, set in their ways. You can't move me! I'm a New Englander, and I've gotten on you. Man, you see that all the time. I'm not saying that retirees are naughty. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, folks, please hear me carefully. You never grow out of it. You never grow out of it. We've all, don't care your age, we're all very, very inclined to be naughty. What does the word naughty mean, folks? Do you remember what it means? The word naughty. I remember when I had a 2-year-old. He's got big blue eyes, and I would say to him, Andrew, honey, that was naughty. And those big blue eyes got bigger because they were magnified by tears. Because even as a 2-year-old, he knew that naughty had bad consequences. Hey, Christian, when's the last time the eyes of your Christian soul were magnified as you looked what you're into and realized that has bad consequences?